Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to this edition of the Master Chess Web Show. Sorry, that was just me. Another browser window popped up.
I didn't know you could talk with two voices at once.
It's a step up from being a ventriloquist. So all sorts of things happen when you try and do this in a slightly unconventional way, because we decided to share a stream rather than just sort of play blitz like a zombie and talk at the same time. So that's why we had some technical difficulties. Hopefully they are now being ironed out, and I discovered today how to get both of us on the screen at the same time, and I will now share the screen. This is the next step. Now we've got 3 games to show you today. We might not get through all of them, but we'll give it a go. And now if I share my screen, it should be this window here. Okay, and the first game we have is Carlsen against Radjabov. And this game was played some time ago. When was this one played, Andrew? Can you just
I'm not sure. I can call it up 1 second. It will take me.
Call this up, please.
It will take me. I think it's 2012, but I might be wrong.
Yeah. So something interesting happened with Radjabov, that he stopped playing the King's Indian. He was the #1 King's Indian player in the world, and
2014.
2014. Okay, and then he stopped playing it, and his rating went up, because I think he's in the top 10 now, and he started playing sort of quite similar technical chess to everybody else. So in a way, it was kind of a pity, because he was the last leading light playing the King's Indian, and now I can't think of anybody actually amongst the very top players. Nakamura was playing it, but he's decided to go into the streaming business. like we have. So that's kind of basically it. I mean, you're quite a fan of the King's Indian, aren't you, Andrew?
I am a fan of the King's Indian. I think against somebody really exceptionally strong, it might be a little bit of a rough ride, simply because there's a lot of theory in some critical lines, like the classical variation, which is difficult to bypass. You can't get by without knowing an awful lot of theory, and you get to a position where white may have a tiny edge and get somebody really strong. That's probably enough.
Yeah. It's very difficult to vary from the having a very straight bat in the opening against very top players.
Well, especially the Mar del Plata variation or something like that.
Yeah, but I mean, when were you planning to play it against the top guys?
Well, I wasn't.
Yeah, well, you're not. even if you wanted to, you wouldn't be able to get a game. You might if you sponsored the tournament.
It's interesting what Radjabov does here, isn't it? Plays the Kramer variation.
Carlsen.
Sorry, Carlsen. Yeah. Excuse me.
Yeah, he plays knight Ge2. Well, I think he's always been trying to sort of shift things around. He always tries to surprise his opponents in the opening, and he plays a vast array of different lines. And is changing it up in almost every game, so people can't use engine prep against him. I think that's what he's worried about. He's not worried about playing people, man to man or man to woman, but he doesn't like the idea of a very powerful engine blasting out 20 moves against him.
No,
and I think that's if you could predict what he's going to play as a top player, then you might be able to sort of put a hole in some of his opening play, if you know in advance. But he changes. So how would you go about beating Magnus Carlsen, Andrew? I see there was a book, Cyrus Lakdwala has a book out on how to beat Magnus Carlsen.
Yeah, and there's a picture of Carlsen grinning, holding the book. I don't know whether that's photoshopped or not. It probably isn't. It reminded me of the books Bendis wrote. There was one called How to Beat Bobby Fischer, wasn't there?
Yeah,
Which
yeah.
actually I quite liked. And there was a book called How Karpov Wins. I really like Bendis's old books. This one is kind of an echo of those books. Yeah, I would say it's pretty difficult to beat Magnus Carlsen, although I do actually make some observations at the end of this game, which might give a clue.
Okay. Well, at least 10 years ago, because this game is what? Oh no, 8 years ago.
2014, yeah.
Yeah. So 8 years ago, then this
could he even been stronger then than he is today?
Maybe.
Possible, yeah.
Yeah.
28-81 back then.
Well, that was yeah. It's all inflation, you know. Right. So there is actually a famous trap in this opening, isn't there? The peace sacrifice. Knight A6, H4, H5. So H4 mainly this is a means of trying to stop black playing F5 by trying to get him to play H5. But as black, I think he gets both of these moves in the end anyway.
Yeah, this is a very big moment in games for players of all levels, isn't it? And whatever Fianchetto system you play with black, guy plays H4. Should you play H5 or should you just ignore it? I don't know. I mean, my feeling, my instinct is to always ignore it and try and get on with counterplay. But that may not be the most sensible course. You know.
Didn't you give something else in this line, like with a delayed castling or with E5?
Well, this was really donkeys years ago because I used to play this with black, and I lost a game to Fedorowicz in the Hastings Premier where he played some interesting stuff here. He played C5 early, I know that. But in a book I wrote a long time ago, I recommended C6, Knight G3, A6.
Okay.
On the board, and try and keep it flexible to divert White away from, because White kind of runs out of useful moves at a certain point.
Yeah.
Like here. Is he going to play here?
Yeah, he can't easily get E5 in, which is the main problem with this C6, A6 and B5 thing. There was a Bulgarian player actually who used to go C6, A6 and B5 in almost every line in the King's Indian. Krum Georgiev, and he would also play Knight F6 to D7. So even in the classical line, Krum Georgiev was playing like Knight F3, castles. I mean, you did say that there wasn't a good line here for black, but you can do the Krum Georgiev setup. Now probably A6 here, and then White does Rook E1, and then he would do Knight FD7 to take the sting out of E5, just go B5. And he, that was him sorted with black against D4. he just played this setup in every game. It was a
I like to see him do it against the barrier attack.
Is that possible?
I doubt it. H4 becoming quicker than he thought possible.
So what? Knight F3, G6, Knight C3.
No, it's not possible, is it?
Yes. Well, you would go here. Sorry, and that's E4, wasn't it? So
he couldn't get it.
Well, you can do something similar. It's a perk, isn't it? Do you think that's going to stop me? C6. What? Bishop E3.
Bishop F4, of course. Bishop F4.
Bishop F4. Right. Well, we just go what? Knight FD7, obviously.
Yeah. You could be making theory as you go along in this show. This could be.
By the way, this comes with a health warning. Don't adopt any of these suggestions in your own games, or if you do, it is at your own risk.
Doesn't look too bad, funny enough.
Well, I've seen them do similar things, and we're not wasting a tempo playing Bishop G7.
Anyway, back to Carlsen against Radjabov.
Right. Okay. So that B5 was not meant to be that. Thought I was doing this game. Anyway, Bishop G5. This has got the brutal threat of playing Bishop takes H5, and that explains Black's next move. If you go Knight C5 here, then White will do this sacrifice. And this is probably just very strong. You can argue about it. you know, put a cloud engine on it, but it wouldn't be my cup of tea. So we go Queen E8, Queen D2, Knight C5, and now Carlsen castles queenside, and Black plays Knight G4, and White takes it off. So Knight G4. So White, if he goes Rook DF1, then F6 deprives him of a square for this important dark square bishop. So it gets traded off, and that is important. So bishop takes G4, bishop takes F3, bishop D7. Now it's around here that White wishes his knight wasn't on G3, because then he could probably go G4 very quickly. Well, he'd certainly think about it. And he goes back bishop E3. And now we get B6, which for me, that was kind of a slightly strange move, because we want to open files on the queen side, and B6 doesn't look like a very efficient way of doing that, right? So as Black, I would somehow want to be going C6 and B5 or B5. Well, we have a B5 in the next game, which Andrew will lovingly show you as a famous victory by him.
Can he play B5 now?
B5 now? Well, you probably get very tatty pawns when White takes the knight off and then takes this off. You know, so you know this is not for strategists really, for Black.
Maybe Knight F1.
Knight F1. Well, you're probably not going to blockade the pawn on C4 anyway. And if you go Knight E3, Black will play bishop H6.
Trouble is, this is a bit of an all-in position for Black already, isn't it?
Well, the end game, and I'm not sure I'd want an end game against Carlsen with those pawns.
No, you've got to land some sort of an attack. I don't know. Can you go bishop H6 and try and make a draw? I don't know. It's not that clear.
Yeah. Well, I actually thought that maybe Black should play Knight A4 just to trade the knights, and then you've got B5 later. But the computer didn't like it very much when I tried putting an engine on it. It just hated it. But it hates all my moves. I never play the best move according to the engines. Never ever. Anyway, we had B6 played, and now White goes King B1, and Black goes King H7, and F5 is already possible. Apparently Black wanted to wait for Knight GE2 first before playing F5, which I can well understand, because the knight is sort of slightly threatening for Black's king on G3 when you go F5 early.
Well, you also want to take back on F5 with the pawn, don't you?
Yeah, definitely.
Ideally.
Yeah. So, but the queen does cover H5.
Well, precisely, that's right. But giving up the light square bishop in a position like this is a huge concession, isn't it?
Well, you don't need to. You go EFGF.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Yeah. So you know, so it's possible anyway, but I don't think there's anything wrong with king here. And now White goes Queen C2, shadowing Black's king, and now maybe Bishop H6 is a decent move. It's very typical for some King's Indians. You will often play Bishop H6 to trade off your bishop that is blocked in. But Black plays A4 instead. Knight GE2, and now he goes F5. And White goes EF. And bishop takes F5. Looks quite playable as well. Mainly because when we get this, the knight comes to E4. White will not be able to blockade E4 with a minor piece or even a major piece. Black will be able to take on E4 and then go bishop G4, and it's probably about equal that. Yeah,
I think this is okay for Black, isn't it? I mean, you've got a lot of counterplay, and if he can't put a knight on E4, there's nothing here, is there, for White?
Yeah. And you can trade the bishop with bishop H6 as well, so it's probably just going to be.
Could be better for Black.
Well, maybe.
A3 maybe coming
Yeah.
up.
Well, don't know about that. Just I can see White winning that in a pawn game. So he takes f5, G takes f5, and this is all according to the maxim. That it was Boleslavsky, wasn't it, when he saw Hugh Alexander recapture the bishop on f5 against Botvinnik in the was it a radio match, and he got absolutely splattered. And Boleslavsky famously said, "In Russia, every schoolboy knows to take with the G pawn in the King's Indian." Ignorant amateurs.
I'm sure.
From England.
I'm sure Alexander was over the moon to hear
that. So anyway, Rook H3, and we see a lot of this at club level.
Threatening precisely nothing.
Well, he wants to go Rook G3 to G5 apparently. Right, Black goes King H8. White now goes, so he's getting ready. He unpins because he wants to meet Rook G3 with pawn to F4, and in any case he can play pawn to F4. So Carlsen stops that by playing pawn to F4 himself. And now this has got quite an interesting effect on what bishops are good and what bishops are bad, because now this bishop is hemmed in, whereas the formerly bad bishop will become very good if this pawn moves. In any case, Black's got the option to take on E4 at some point. What Radjabov did, I think, is very good. He goes Knight E4. So if White takes that, then Black recaptures with the F pawn and hits the rook on H3. White does take it, and then Black takes back. White goes Rook G3, and Black plays Bishop G4. So now we get a transformation in the position with White playing Rook takes G4.
I mean, actually, if we dwell on your earlier question about, how to beat Magnus Carlsen, I mean, obviously this is a kind of very crazy concept, but one of the ways you can try and beat somebody really strong is to create a position like this, where there are transformations of the pawn structure all the way through, and there's enough complexity to actually maybe confuse even the strongest players, to create a position where even the strongest players can make a mistake. Yeah. So maybe that's one way to do it.
Well, there's probably a few players that calculate as well as Carlsen. I mean, I would have thought Nakamura is sort of right up there, and probably a few others as well. It's in the simple positions that he's doing all the damage.
Yeah, he's incredible in those positions, really.
Yeah.
But this sort of position, anybody can win or lose, can't they?
Yeah. So I think you need to create chaos, probably against him. So actually, Nakamura, if he ever decided to take chess seriously again, he's got the kind of game which, if he could develop it, one or two notches, it could be very annoying for Carlsen. I think. So anyway, Bishop G4 takes, pawn to F5. So the idea of this move is to keep this bishop hemmed in, because Black wants to free it with EF, and then the bishop would be blasting down this long diagonal. So by playing F5, you keep the pawn on E5. And now after rook there, it goes knight here, rook back there, queen takes E4. And it looks at this stage that White has got pretty good compensation for the exchange. He's got the E4 square, which is very important, and Black king is looking exposed. So it doesn't look half bad. Queen D7, pawn to A3. So he wants to hide the king on A2. But now B5 takes the initiative. And I think this move's a very instructive one. We see more B5 in the next famous encounter.
I can't wait. I can't wait.
Yeah. The main thing that Black has to be concerned about here is that he's got rooks in the position. Now, what do rooks need? Rooks need open lines. and if they're stuck behind their pawn chain, they can't get in. So if you've got a rook, you want it to be able to have a nice open line, and that is what b5 tries to do. Now c5 is played, dc. So again, Radjabov is looking to open lines.
Yeah, he wants to play rook f4 if Carlsen takes on c5, doesn't he?
Yeah. Sometimes you can even play rook f4 as an exchange sack in the King's Indian. Those are also good. You know, lots of fun. You don't know. Yeah. You just put your rook on f4 to open up your bishop on g7 sometimes.
Perhaps not here.
Well, probably not.
Black's king is not exactly tucked away, safe and sound, is
it? Yeah. Okay. Well, DC h5, and now, yeah, rook f4 is probably a little bit hopeful just here, isn't it? c4. I considered rook a6.
Yeah,
okay,
c4
c4
move. You can see why he plays c4 though. Wants to win.
Well, he doesn't want his c pawn to be taken. Very sensible too. h6. Well, you need to move the bishop to f6. Bishop c5, and now rook f7. And white goes rook f1. So he's still got a lot of pressure here. Rook e8.
Very unbalanced, isn't it?
Oh yeah. Well, this kind of position is well, Radjabov, you know, was before he started to become very technical and quite orthodox, which has been a recent development in his play. I think something happened. Maybe he got the he started to use cloud engines or something, and realised that the cloud engine was giving his King's Indian, you know, a disadvantage in all his investigations.
It's possible.
Yeah. You put the King's Indian into almost any engine, just hates it. You know, just, you know, good for white, good for white, good for white. You know? That actually is why the correspondence player Umansky, right? He was playing the King's Indian, and he played it because he thought all the engines got it wrong. But yeah. I digress. Anyway, bishop b4. Probably get worried we won't have time for Gordon Martin. Bishop g5, knight f5, c6. So he's still looking to open lines to get his rooks active. Bishop d6, hitting e5, bishop f4, hitting f5, knight g7. I'm glossing over this bit because it's all too much for me. If you want, you can always download the game and look at it to your heart's content with the most powerful engine available. Queen takes d6, knight takes e8, queen takes d5, queen takes d5 cd.
Look at that pawn chain.
Yeah, look at that pawn chain. Now, at the end of this, white has got this move, g3. And if black went rook e7, white goes knight f6, and he's hitting d5. And then if you go bishop takes h6, white goes rook h1. And if you go there, white goes rook takes h6. That move. That would have been hard to see. Right, that is hard to see without an engine running or a mobile phone tucked away in the toilet.
Yeah, this is very this is crazy stuff, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, let's just go to king h7, because this bit I thought was very instructive, because he gets this massive pass pawns for the piece. Knight here, rook f6, knight takes b5, and the pawns are going to roll. f3, knight d4, king takes h6, bring the king in. As we covered, was it last time? Can't remember. The king is a strong piece, and in the end game you have to use him. King c2, king g5, king d2, f2, knight e2, rook f3.
very well played by Radjabov, this, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it's terrific. Well, I think he's a brilliant player. He he has come under a bit of criticism for drawing games. Right, that's for making draws. I think there was one particular line. It was like a Petrov or something, where he made a standard 15-move draw several times, draw by repetition, and he wasn't that popular with the crowd for doing that. But if it works for him results wise, this is not supposed to be entertainment. They're playing for prizes here.
Well, although actually this is highly entertaining.
Oh yeah, terrific game. I mean, I think that it's a pity that he stopped playing the King's Indian, actually.
Yeah, now I make a few notes at the end of this game, which I don't know, might appear in Cyrus Lakdawala's book. I think I annotated this game lightly based on Radjabov's notes.
I think it does answer the question how to beat Magnus Carlsen, because it's with great difficulty.
Yeah. So what do I say here? Keep a fluid pawn structure.
It says, what does this game teach us? Keep a fluid pawn structure, which can change as the game goes on. Now, that little bit of jiggery pokery we had with white going e takes f5 and then f4, that changed which of black's bishops was going to be more active. But then Radjabov was very clever in playing knight e4, and he ended up with 2 active bishops. But his king was standing there with the wind in its hair, no defenders around at all, and it needed a lot of skill to keep control in that position. Number 2, let him make the running to an extent. He's much better when he is diffusing your initiative than he is in creating one of his own. Yeah, so that's an interesting comment, actually. I mean, Magnus Carlsen is obviously very, very good in attack as well, but it's probably not quite his greatest comfort zone. I think Nepomniachtchi, he likes to attack, and it's quite kind of a pity he didn't give the King's Gambit a flutter at some point during that match, given he'd produced some video course on it fairly recently. Keep the pieces on, especially the queens. Keep it complex. Believe in your position. He is astonishingly good when he senses that the opponent fears. So yeah, it's I think I'd probably have to take some time off from other duties if I had to beat Magnus Carlsen as well. Needs a lot of time.
A lot of time, yeah. You'd have to take a lot of time off.
So would we both,
and get into a time machine.
We could take him on a clock simul, us two against Magnus.
Not really, no, thank you.
Oh, okay. Anyway, I think it's time for us to move on to the next game. Now we know how to beat Magnus Carlsen. We will find out how to beat Stephen Gordon.
Thanks. Well, actually, I included this game as a kind of counterpoint to the last one, because it's similar in some ways. It's a game I played against Stephen Gordon a while back in the 4NCL, and it was an interesting example of how black can come to life in a King's Indian stroke modern position. Now, Nigel, you played the modern for a long, long time, and you just gave it up, didn't you? You just didn't feel it was a legitimate way to play against somebody really strong.
Well, what I actually did was I had a look at my results, and they were, they were pretty good against people who were graded like 1700, but pretty bad against people who are a lot higher rated. And it also does funny things to your play. You start to think it's really cool to be on 3 ranks and your opponent having loads of space. And so when I did move away from it, I actually got the GM title fairly shortly afterwards. But I got one of my norms playing the modern because I needed.
Yes, it's when I play it these days, just blitz and stuff like that. They all tend to play lines for Bishop E3, although not necessarily here. They would play Knight C3 first, and then if d6, bishop e3. This is incredibly popular.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it's that great. I mean, black can play a6, can't he? That's a decent move.
Yeah,
C6
a6,
is not
c6.
so bad. There are always chances against these lines, but this is a little bit unusual because it does allow black to play c5, which is an opportunity he doesn't get too often. I didn't do that, and there is also d5. That's quite an interesting move in this position.
Yeah.
And if he pushes on, something like this,
Yeah.
trying to take immediate advantage of the position of the bishop on e3. This is also quite interesting. Leads to an interesting position.
How about knight f6 instead of d5? Did you think about that?
No, I didn't. But of course,
If he goes e5, you've got knight d5.
And is the answer if he goes knight c3, are you going to go d5? Is that right?
Yeah, d5, e5, knight g4, bishop moves c5 or something.
The North Sea defence lives again.
Well, this is the Master Chess Web Show variation. I think.
Okay, I can honestly say that I didn't think about that too long, and
Yeah, you probably shouldn't either.
just played d6.
Okay.
I wanted to go back into the normal line, to be quite honest.
Okay.
But he played f3, and well, it was pretty clear that he was trying to keep his options open. Will he play c4 or not? This is the question. Go back into a sameish-like position, and well, there are some advantages to white by delaying that knight on b1. You know, I decided to play a non-committal move there. Really,
Yeah.
I'm kind of waiting for him to play knight c3, and interesting variation occurs if he goes c4.
Yeah. Well, that's the. It could be like a burn variation of the sameish, where black goes c6 and.
Well, I think I was going to go there then, as far as I recall.
Right.
I think that's a fairly unique possibility, and if he keeps defending that point, I think I can do this.
Yeah, I don't see why not.
No.
So,
all in all, it's a slightly unusual twist on a familiar sort of in a familiar setting, and he continued to play slightly unusual moves by playing Queen d2. So I thought, well, time to be fairly direct. I think I got this idea from you a long, long time ago.
Well, I was always putting the knight on c6.
Yeah.
It's like my version of the Krum-Georgiev system.
Well, that's right, and I recalled that in this position you were playing it here, enticing white forward. Let him play this if he wants to.
I went a6 first, and then after a4 went knight c6.
Yeah, I remember that you played something like this. So I was kind of thinking about that sort of thing during the game, and so it appealed to me to go e5. So he pushes on. He still hasn't made up his mind, and now when I go back there, I think c4. So what are we going back into here? Is this a modern defence, or is this a kind of King's Indian?
Well, you can go f5 straight away.
Well, I did. I think there's no point in mucking around here.
Yeah.
Because what is White's plan? That knight on e2 is slightly inflexibly placed. White might prefer to have his bishop on d3 instead, especially with the knight on e7. Well,
normally they would either play for c5. That's the logical pawn lever, or they in the sameish structure they often play for some g4 or something. But I mean, it's a standard position, but it's not a standard position in some ways, because White's played the whole setup slightly differently to normal. Yeah.
With that knight on e2. I mean, I know it's a line, but you wouldn't necessarily get a position where black's played f5 so early. And I think that actually helps black, because it's less easy for white to cramp black on the king side, which is one of his main ideas, g4, and then try and...
We can actually check if this position has been reached in any other games, and we've got there's only one game coming up, which is your game. So if we look at the book here, this is the book. Oh, hang on, I'll switch the engine off. We don't do engines. So it's got your game in there, right? and it doesn't have any other games, so it's fairly unique. Does it have any other games here? No. Any other games here? No. Any other games here? No. I think it's got no top games with any of these lines. So
well, it is then a unique position, isn't it? It's interesting that, in an opening which is so well charted that you can actually reach a unique position, which is similar to a lot of other positions, of course, but it's a unique move order.
Yeah. So
I don't mind Black's position here at all.
Games, actually.
I think one of the main dangers to Black in a position like this is to actually get squeezed on the queen side. White castles, plays king b1, rook c1, and gradually plays for c5.
But there have been other games in this position. It's probably a transposition. So we got Pataki against Spresic and Peitzer against Drazic.
All household names.
And Zalkind against Vadash. So you're in good company here.
I didn't know those games, I have to say.
Right. Okay.
I was wondering what he was going to do. I think I expected him to castle, but this game was played a while.
Yeah.
Well, he played h3, which was a slight surprise, and then g4. And now I recall thinking a long time. I had a disaster against Stephen Gordon in another game. He absolutely slaughtered me. I can't remember whether it was before this game or after it. But yeah, I think I found a good move here. I mean, it's a critical position, isn't it?
Yeah.
That g4 move, is it an attacking move or is it an attempt to run Black out of space?
Did you consider f4 after his g4? Sorry, after his h3.
Which one?
h3, f4.
Yeah, I thought that was a bit inflexible.
Well, it is, but what you can often do in the King's Indian is you can often actually castle and then advance your pawns in front of your king. So you're probably all sat here for g5 and knight g6 and castles, and then still play for g4.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I suppose White goes into the other plan, doesn't it?
Yeah, he'll go for c5.
Well, I mean, I'm not so sure he couldn't play that right away.
Well, probably could.
Yeah.
But that would be another way of playing it, and you'd avoid g4.
I think that's what frightened me at the time, that actually, if I constructed too rigid a pawn formation on the king side, he could just go c5.
Yeah.
So I was kind of happy to see that, because now, he's got to really, he almost overstretch his position to play c5 in a situation like this. Anyway, I was pleased to see that he castled, because that allows Black to play b5. And I think Black is now starting to get into the game. Well, more than that, really.
Reminds me a bit of the famous game Portnoy against Stein.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, where Stein sacrificed pawns like confetti. He sacrificed about 4 pawns and was suddenly had a terrific attack.
Well, one of the an important point to notice is that if White pushes by, Black also does the same, and now the e4 pawn is attacked, which he's got to deal with. So he took the pawn, which I was pleased to see. I mean, if he takes this one, take back something like rook g1, then I think I just take this pawn, and I think Black can get a good attack on the b file. He's also got to spend some time regaining that pawn, which is not totally clear cut, is it?
Couldn't you do b4 and then take on e4?
When? Here?
Yeah, here.
Yeah, maybe. That's also a possibility, yeah. Well, I guess, where does he put his knight? I suppose he puts it here, or does he? Then bishop d7. Yeah, it's not easy, is it? Not easy. You probably have to go there then.
I would munch his central pawns
and just take this.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
because then you get an f5 square as well, which I like.
Well, that may help to explain why he takes on b5, but of course this does give black excellent play. And now he played a3, which it's hard to suggest. It's hard to suggest moves to him. I don't actually like White's position here very much. No. I mean, I think the White king is a clear target, and Black's king is really quite safe. You've also got a square for your biggest problem piece in the King's Indian or modern, the knight on e7. You know, sometimes that knight can come to g8, and the whole position unravels. When the knight's on e7, you've got to justify the position of that knight somehow. So you can either play c6 at some point, which seems unlikely, or you can put it on g8 at some point. But a3, again, a move I was pleased to see, and Black's initiative just really now starts to flow. You can see a big difference between this one and the last one, in that White in the last game was always running the show in the opening to an extent. He always had chances, but somehow Stevens misplayed this, hasn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't like his position at all here.
I don't know quite how he could have defended e4, because before castling queenside, he should have tried to defend that. Maybe even bishop g2, even though the bishop's not very good there. Then that might have been the best way to defend e4, and then somehow play it very slowly.
Basically, play for c5.
Yeah, and not commit his king too early.
Well, I think this is now beginning to get ugly, because Black's getting his pawn back and retaining all the pressure. I just don't think this position is at all tenable for White. Do you?
No.
It's interesting that Black's still got his very poor knight on e7, but of course it doesn't matter here, because Black's got open lines for his major pieces. All his major pieces are fantastic, and the knight can come to f4 at a moment's notice.
Yeah, you could route the knight to c8, by the way, I think.
Yeah, could do. I mean, that takes a little bit of time. I was hoping to be able to polish White off here, because, well, c6, another key move.
Yeah. But now the knight is alive, because if he takes, it comes to c6.
Yeah, I think I intended to go here first of all. So it was a toss-up between that and c6. I mean, c6 just made good sense, really. Now that he's put his queen on the same file as his king, you really want your rook on c8, don't you?
No, I like c6 because it brings your knight on e7 into play.
Yeah. Well, now, of course, White gets a bit desperate, unfortunately. And now the game gets somewhat easier. He's opened up lines in front of his king, and that move signals the end. Well, I quite enjoyed that game. I thought at least I should show one of my games of this show.
Yeah, I'm not sure he would have enjoyed it. He did.
That was the choice.
Play until mate. That was.
No, I don't think so. I think I think somehow the score has become. I can't quite remember when he resigned. I think after Rook C3. It was a long time ago. Don't forget, probably 15 years ago or something like that.
Yeah. Well,
I think Stephen's gone on. He's not to play professional chess. He's got himself a career, didn't he?
What you mean? Professional chess isn't a career?
Well, Stephen was an exceptionally strong player. Exceptionally strong player, but I think I don't actually know what he's doing, but I don't think it's professional chess. That's for sure.
Yeah, yeah. By the way, did you see my game against Politzer from? It's kind of similar.
I think I have. I must have done.
Right.
I remember the name.
Yeah. So it's from Graz, 1981.
Yeah.
So
there you go.
You could do that game next time. Let's have a look at Winter against Yates. We've got time for Winter against Yates.
Winter against Yates, yeah. Another classic encounter.
Right.
Would you like the date of this game?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind. Hang on, how come it's not? We've got to go right back, haven't we?
1930.
1930. Fine.
Yeah.
Fine year.
Yeah.
So Okay, so this is a game between two of the older school of British players. Got Winter and Yates. I think they were both professionals actually, but neither of them were doing very well at that time. You know, it's Blackburn managed to eke out a living by doing simultaneous displays. He used to tour the UK twice a year by drinking and doing these simultaneous displays.
Wasn't he famous for drinking lots of brandy during games in simultaneous
Oh
display?
yeah.
Have brandy stationed round the room.
Yeah, Blackburn was he had a tremendous constitution because he was still in good shape at 80. Even after all that drinking. I mean, there's some famous Blackburn stories about him punching Steinitz through a window.
Is that right?
Yeah. They had quite a few little altercations. Of course, Steinitz was about half of his height, which didn't help him. And Blackburn would get liquored up, and Steinitz would say something cutting to him, and Blackburn would hit him.
Oh,
yeah.
I didn't know that.
All right. There's some good stuff on Blackburn. Okay, so we've got Fred Yates playing black. Fred Yates was a really good attacking player, but there were quite a few sides of his game which were not that well developed. And here we have him playing the defence of another drinking grandmaster, Efim Bogo-Indian. He was huge. He was absolutely huge. He was Alekin's drinking buddy, right? But for some reason, Alekin didn't put on as much weight. I think probably Bogo-Indian liked chips or something as well. It was like chips. So we've got Bishop B4 check.
Of course, it's all changed, hasn't it? These days, the modern grandmaster at the top of the game is probably super fit. You have to be to take all the engine work and all the stress involved in modern day chess. It's getting so difficult.
They all wear suits and stuff now as well. It's just it's all so corporate. Yeah, there's no
as opposed to being corpulent.
Anyway, we've got Queen E7, which is one of several moves. If you want to draw, you take on D2, and you might get the draw.
And play like Ulf Andersson.
Queen E7 is quite ambitious. The other moves C5, which aims to control dark squares later with D6 and E5.
That's a good way of unbalancing the game, actually. C5, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And the other move is A5, which is not that popular, but also not bad.
Not bad at all. Timing off like that move, didn't he?
Yeah. So, okay, so back to the game. We have Queen E7, and White plays Knight C3, and Black now takes. Now, we wouldn't normally take quite so early these days. We would probably wait a little bit before doing that.
Well, castle at least.
Yeah, at least castle. But he took that and went Knight E4. White went Queen C2, and he went F5. So now the game has got more of the character of a Dutch defence. Knight D2, and that doesn't look like a very good move actually. It looks like it loses time. And White should do something else here, like G3, E3. So he goes Knight D2. Don't think it's very good. Takes, Queen takes, castles, G3, Knight C6. And now White goes Bishop G2 and Black goes D6. Castles E5. Now, one of the things about exchanging one of your bishops off is that you then know where you should put your pawns, basically. Because you put your pawns normally on the opposite colour to your remaining bishop. So here, Black has got a light square bishop, so he's putting his pawns on dark squares. No mystery about that. White takes on C6, giving up a bishop for a knight, and that is a move I would have been very loath to play. The reason I wouldn't like it at all is that now the king has lost its key defender.
Yeah,
And
it's a short-term move, isn't it? He's going for pressure against Black's pawn structure, but he's
yeah,
underestimating the the weakness of his king.
he might have been a bit concerned about Black playing e4.
Yeah, shut the bishop in, but don't
Yeah,
forget d4 is also hanging, so White's got to do something.
yeah. I mean, this was the idea he had. You know, knight f3 to attack this pawn, but then Black simply goes here. White goes knight e5, and probably Winter, if he had a chance, would play f4. But Yates doesn't give him that opportunity. He just goes straight in with f4.
So White completely underestimated that move, didn't he?
I think that's what he missed. He was probably looking at this line with bishop takes c6, thinking that he could get his knight to e5 and then support it with f4. But he missed this very good attacking move. Well, when you're in that situation, it's very difficult to back down, because if you do, then you end up in trouble anyway, but you're not a pawn up. So he takes the pawn, whereupon Black plays queen c5, hitting the knight. The knight goes back here, and Black goes rook b8.
I thought that was an excellent move.
Yeah. Yeah, he wants to swing the rook over to b6 and h6. I suppose you could also consider going a5 here as well, with the same idea.
Yeah, it takes one move longer.
It does. Rook b8 to b6 to h6, a5, rook a6 to h6.
Oh, okay. Maybe you're right.
Yeah. So, okay, rook b8 looks okay. Rook fd1, e3. Another very good attacking move. I mean, Yates was tremendous when he had the initiative. He did win a game against Alekin himself. It was a funny game as well. It was an early King's Indian, I think, where he went knight c6. Alekin played d5, and Yates put his knight back on b8. And,
it's kind of it's much easier to understand this type of game than it is to understand, you know, games from the modern day. The standard's much higher in the modern day, but these guys make the type of mistakes we can understand and identify with. The grandmasters of today, if they make a mistake, it's like a micro mistake. You can't train your sights on it. But here, it's so much clearer, isn't it, to see what White's doing wrong, really.
yeah. Well, bishop takes c6 was yeah, I mean,
Ambitious.
yeah. He just missed the Black can play f4, I think. Now he goes here.
Excellent move.
Yeah, really good move. Takes g3. So White's king side is getting shredded right now. His king's pawn cover. He doesn't have his bishop, doesn't have pawns in front of the king. I wonder if he could have played better in say, this position. I don't know.
Not easy, is it?
No.
You can't really move very much.
If you take, I was wondering if you could play king h1 somewhere. Probably not.
Well, he takes, he goes rook 8, b6 straight away.
Yeah. Well,
Horrible.
okay. Rook fd1, e3, f takes e3, fg, hg, queen e5, hitting the g3 pawn. White defends it with e4, so now the queen is covering g3, but Black simply takes this one. And still the problem remains with White's king, that it's just incredibly exposed. Well, White goes rook d2, and Black plays rook b6. Good old-fashioned rook lift. You know where you are with rook lifts, don't you? There's some cool rook lifts in the Budapest. I know you recently wrote a book on the Budapest.
Yes, the Budapest. Everybody plays 4 bishop f4.
Oh, right. Is that a good move?
Passion killer.
I saw a game between in the whole GM tournament between Shreyas Royal and the Hungarian GM, whose name escapes me.
Fodor?
Fodor, that's right.
Yeah.
Did you include that one?
No, well, it was after the book was published, so
Oh,
probably not. Probably not.
probably used your book.
Did he lose?
Oh, he won.
Oh,
But he won some long game, you know. He had to grind his opponent down.
was it in a bishop f4 line or a knight f3 line?
I can't remember.
Oh,
I had my own troubles. So anyway, knight f3, and we have a note here that queen d3 was a sterner defense. Well, if you can do some exchanges, if you are under pressure, then exchanges are one of the main ways to try and escape. Of course, if you're pawn down under pressure, then you may just lose the endgame anyway. But it's one of the main means of defense is to try and conduct a few exchanges in order to save your skin. So queen d3 attempts to do that, and then white goes rook f1, trying for some exchanges. And it then appears that white may be able to head for the hills here and get his king out this way. So for this reason, black might have played bishop b7 in this position, which would have made the defense much more difficult. Thus, it's nice that all black's pieces are now involved in the attack. Attack is a numbers game where if you can bring all your pieces to bear on your opponent's king and he can't muster up enough defenders, then normally you should count on the attack working, especially with a position with the king so exposed.
yeah. I mean, he's just threatening moves like rook e6 there, isn't he?
Yeah.
And then rook across.
Rook e2 a threat in that position.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, rook e2, and then even rook takes f3, because rook e8 check, you play rook f8, discovered check. So looks pretty dire for white. Rook b6, knight f3, rook g6, king f2, bishop b7. Well, this is looking absolutely horrendous for white now. Rook d4, queen e7, c5, bishop a6, now hitting the pawn on e2. Well, white goes back, rook d2. And now black plays rook h6, trying to get in this way. So the idea now is just to go rook h2 check because the knight is pinned. King g2, rook e6, now training his sights on the e2 pawn. Queen b3, pinning the rook, unpins. So now e2 is threatened once again. Queen c2. And I guess the idea, if black plays bishop takes e2, what's the idea after bishop takes e2? Looks like a pretty good move.
Could it be knight g5?
You can't then just take the knight?
Then he takes on e2.
Oh, maybe. Yeah, maybe.
Maybe. I hang on a minute. Bishop e2, knight d4.
Okay.
I think that's it, isn't it?
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Okay. So rook e3, rook h1. Now you've got to be careful with white here because there is a one-move threat to checkmate with queen takes h7. Black goes h6. Of course, Winter didn't expect Yates to overlook that, but he just wanted to get his rook to h2 for defensive purposes. But now there comes bishop takes e2. White goes knight h4, which was probably his big hope that he's threatening knight g6 check now. So he's hoping for some kind of swindle here. But he has reckoned without black's next move, which is to play rook takes g3 check. And this leads to mate. So if you take this, king takes g3, you've got queen g5 check. The king has to go to h3, and then queen g4 is mate. I hope everyone can see that. King takes g3, queen g5 check. Can't interpose the check, can't move to the f file. Got to go to h3, and then it's queen g4 mate. So Yeah, it was a really nice game, and the grand old attacking style, which we do get it still sometimes, but
Needs
it's
a bit of assistance from the opponent.
generally speaking it does, or their preparation has got to go quite wrong. They get thrown out by something and then make a mistake, and then
Always good to see that.
yeah. So the Bogo, we could just talk a little bit more about the Bogo while we're still on this game, because it's a pretty good defense actually. If you play the Nimzo and Bogo, so the Nimzo is if White plays c4 after knight f6. Well, we could do it here: c4, knight f6, knight c3, bishop b4. This combines very well with the Bogo to give you defense against d4, but there would remain the issue what you do against the flank openings, because as with many of the defenses against 1d4, they don't automatically furnish you with a defense against flank openings. Now, black goes here, white goes c4. Now, bishop b4 check. White has got several moves here. You can even do knight c3. Knight bd2 is possible. But bishop d2 is known as the main line. And this is where this line, bishop takes d2 check, is the attempt to calm things down. I've played this way a few times myself, actually. You go queen e7, then your opponent does something like that, and you do rook d8. He does queen c2 or something.
Ulf Anderson loves this.
Oh, yeah. Well, you can get away fast. Bishop takes c4, c5. And peace reigns. I think all the games here draws. So this is a really good way to make a draw. But it gets slightly more complicated if white does g3 in this position. And then we probably should do, well, you can do something like d5 and b6, I believe.
Is b6 any good right away?
You can do it, yeah. b6, bishop g2, bishop b7. Then white goes knight c3 or something. And then
knight e4, I guess.
Well, you've got to be very careful because
knight g5 trick.
There's a trick.
Let's have a look.
Famous trick like that.
Yeah, but can I now play knight e4?
You can.
I see what you mean. Just take it.
Yeah.
No, then f. Oh, I see.
Bishop takes. Bishop takes. Yeah. This is all theory actually.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, takes here, and then knight c6.
Is that enough? Queen b7?
No, probably not.
Well, what happens? Queen b7, knight takes d4. What's going on?
Yeah, well, it's all theory. You put this in your cloud engine of choice. Rook b1 now is the top scoring move.
Amazing.
So that's all theory.
I suppose you've got to go queen a5 check there.
Well, you might want to go d5 somewhere or d6 here, right? And you can also play d5 in this position.
Yeah.
You go bishop g2 and you do like c6 and then b6. Castles b6.
Solid, isn't it?
Yeah.
Rock solid.
b6, knight bd7. Really solid way to play with black. So you've got that, and you also have, if you're feeling a bit more frisky, you can play c5. Victor Korchnoi played this a lot, and what he was looking for was a pawn structure like this, where now if white goes g3 or something, you castle, bishop g2, d6, castles, and probably
queen e7, isn't it? Queen e7.
Well, knight c6 is the most popular move.
And then go e5. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The knight
easy to play for black, isn't it? You're just improving your pawn structure.
Well, you want white to play d5 here, and then you go knight b8, hoping to go knight bd7 and knight c5. And then if you do keep your knight on c5, you have a really nice position.
I always felt white should go A3 in a position like this, just to get rid of that pawn.
Well, he does usually.
Ah, okay.
And black goes nice A6, and the
Yeah.
game continues. Ideally, you would want to get your stuff like this, and then knight FD7 and knight C5. So, there's another plan for black in the Bogo.
No, I think it's quite an interesting and original plan. That worth playing.
Yeah, but there's quite a lot of scope in the Bogo, and a lot of the choice is with black, right? Whereas if you play a Queen's Indian, a lot of the choice lies with white. So it's an opening that in many ways is easier to play as a club player. Right?
Yeah.
The Bogo is a good way to go, and also you can play after 2c4. You can go for a Bogo like this as well. Bishop b4.
That's Kerry's defense, isn't it?
Yeah, it can transpose into a Bogo. So takes, queen takes, and then knight f6, knight f3, knight c3. But now we're in a bishop takes d2 check line.
Yes.
We lost some of our options. But yeah, so the Bogo's a good line.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I just wanted to say, if anyone's watching this video later on YouTube, please do subscribe to our channel and also like the video, because that improves our rankings. And we're all about rankings here. So any
it would be nice if you could follow us on Twitch as well.
Yeah, if you can follow us on Twitch, we'd also really appreciate that. And thank you very much for watching. And
Yep.
we will be back on Monday.
Thank you, Nigel. A good show. Well done.
Okay, thank you too. Yeah.
Cheers all.